What happens when a talk show host digs too deep into a legend's past, unearthing a wound that never healed? Clint Eastwood sat across from Jimmy Kimmel, his weathered face a mask of calm, but his eyes burned with a fire that could ignite a room. The studio audience buzzed, unaware of the storm brewing. Kimmel, with his smug grin, leaned forward, ready to twist the knife. He thought he had Clint cornered, thought he could make headlines by dragging up a decades-old rumor. But Clint wasn't just any guest. He was a man who'd faced down outlaws on screen and critics off it, and he wasn't about to let a slick host rewrite his life for laughs. The show had started smoothly enough. Kimmel's usual banter rolled out, all polished charm and rehearsed. Jabs. Clint played along, his gravelly voice dropping one-liners that had the audience chuckling. But the air shifted when Kimmel veered off script. "So, Clint," he said, his tone dripping with false curiosity, "let's talk about 1973. Word is you sabotaged a film project, left a good friend high and dry. Care to clear that up?" The crowd gasped, sensing blood. Clint's jaw tightened, his fingers curling into fists on the armrests. The accusation wasn't just gossip. It was a dagger aimed at his honor. The dark secret Kimmel dangled was about a film that never saw daylight, a Western that was meant to be a masterpiece. Rumor had it Clint pulled out last minute, leaving his friend, director Sam Carver, humiliated when the studio scrapped it. Sam's career never recovered, and whispers followed Clint for years. Whispers Kimmel now amplified for ratings. "Come on, Clint. You owe us the truth," Kimmel pressed, his smile sharp as a razor. "Did you stab your buddy in the back for a better deal?" The audience leaned in, hungry for drama. Clint's voice was low, dangerous. "You got no idea what you're talking about, Jimmy." The crowd hushed. Kimmel laughed, but it was nervous, forced. "Oh, I think I do. Sources say you walked away, left Sam Carver to crash and burn. That's cold, man." Clint leaned forward, his stare cutting through Kimmel like a bullet. "You calling me a liar on your little show?" The words were a growl, each one heavy with warning. Kimmel faltered but doubled down, his ego too big to retreat. "I'm just asking what everyone wants to know. Why'd you ditch him?" The truth, known only to a few, was that Clint hadn't ditched Sam. The studio had forced his hand, threatening to blacklist them both if he didn't take another project. Clint had begged Sam to fight, but Sam, broken by the industry's cruelty, walked away. Clint carried that guilt, but he'd never betrayed his friend. Kimmel's accusation wasn't just wrong. It was a personal attack, a cheap shot meant to humiliate. "You want to talk about cold?" Clint snapped. "How about you, digging up a man's pain for your audience to clap like trained monkeys?" The crowd gasped again, some cheering Clint's defiance. Kimmel's face reddened. He wasn't used to guests fighting back. "Hey, I'm just doing my job," he shot back, his voice sharp. "People want answers, Clint. You can't hide forever." Clint stood, towering over the desk, his presence filling the stage. "I don't hide, Jimmy. But you? You're hiding behind that desk, throwing dirt 'cause it's all you've got." The audience roared, split between shock and excitement. Kimmel's smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl. He'd wanted a viral moment, but he'd woken a giant. Clint didn't sit back down. He paced, slow and deliberate, like a gunslinger sizing up a foe. The cameras zoomed in, catching every line in his face, every spark in his eyes. Kimmel tried to regain control, tossing out another jab. "So, what? You're the victim here? Poor Clint, misunderstood?" The sarcasm was thick, but it only fueled Clint's fire. "You don't know me, kid," he said, his voice slicing through the tension. "You don't know what loyalty means. But you're about to find out." The crowd was on its feet, sensing this wasn't just a talk show spat. It was a reckoning. Clint Eastwood's boots clicked on the polished stage, each step a warning shot. The audience held its breath, caught in the electric standoff between a Hollywood titan and a host who'd bitten off more than he could chew. Jimmy Kimmel, his face tight with a mix of anger and panic, gripped his desk like it could shield him from Clint's wrath. He'd thrown a punch with that accusation about Sam Carver's ruined career, but Clint wasn't the type to stay down. He was ready to hit back, and the room could feel it. "You think you can drag a man's name through the mud for a few laughs?" Clint said, his voice steady but sharp, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. He stopped pacing, planting himself, inches from Kimmel's desk, his shadow looming over the host. "Sam Carver was my friend. You don't get to use him to prop up your sorry show." The words landed like a slap, and the audience erupted in cheers, some shouting Clint's name. Kimmel's eyes darted to the crowd, then back to Clint, his confidence cracking. Kimmel leaned back, forcing a smirk, but his voice betrayed a tremor. "Oh, come on, Clint. Don't play the saint. You left Sam to drown back then. Everyone knows it. You got your big break, and he got nothing." The lie was bold, designed to sting, and it did. Clint's face twitched, a flicker of pain crossing his steely gaze. Sam hadn't just been a colleague. He'd been like a brother, a man who shared Clint's dreams of making films that mattered. The memory of Sam's broken spirit after the studio's betrayal still haunted Clint, and Kimmel was twisting that knife for the cameras. "You're a vulture, Jimmy," Clint shot back, his voice low and venomous, "picking at old wounds to feed your ego. You don't care about truth. You care about headlines." The crowd roared again, feeding off Clint's defiance. A few hecklers booed Kimmel, who flinched but tried to mask it with a laugh. "Truth? I'm giving America what they want, answers. You owe Sam's memory that much, don't you?" Kimmel's tone was mocking, but his hands shook slightly as he shuffled his note cards. Clint stepped closer, his voice dropping to a growl that silenced the room. "You want to talk about what I owe? I carried Sam's pain for years. I fought for him when the suits wanted us both gone. You ever fought for anything, Jimmy? Or do you just tear people down for a paycheck?" The accusation hung heavy, and the audience gasped, sensing the raw honesty in Clint's words. Kimmel's face flushed, his smirk gone. He wasn't used to being called out, not like this, not in front of a crowd that was turning against him. The host scrambled to regain control, his voice rising. "Don't turn this on me, Clint. You're the one with the dirty secret. You walked away from that film, and Sam paid the price. Just admit it." Kimmel's words were desperate now, his cool facade crumbling under Clint's unrelenting stare. The crowd was split. Some shouted for Clint to tell his side. Others egged Kimmel on, craving more drama. But Clint wasn't playing their game. He leaned over the desk, his voice ablade. "You're not worth my truth, Jimmy. You're just a loudmouth with a microphone," Kimmel snapped, his temper flaring. "You think you're untouchable? You're not? I'll keep digging, Clint. I'll find every skeleton in your closet." It was a threat, raw and ugly, and the audience fell silent, stunned by the hostility. Clint didn't flinch. Instead, a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. "Go ahead, kid. Dig. But you better be ready for what you find." The words sent a chill through the room, a promise of something bigger, something Kimmel couldn't handle. The stage manager signaled for a commercial break, but Clint didn't move, his eyes locked on Kimmel. The host squirmed, his bravado fading under the weight of Clint's gaze. The crowd was buzzing, alive with anticipation. This wasn't just a talk show anymore. It was a battlefield, and Clint Eastwood was ready for war. The commercial break did nothing to cool the fire raging between Clint Eastwood and Jimmy Kimmel. As the cameras rolled again, the audience leaned forward, their murmurs a low hum of excitement. Clint stood firm, his weathered frame a monument of defiance, while Kimmel sat hunched, his fingers drumming nervously on the desk. The host had tried to paint Clint as a traitor who'd abandoned his friend Sam Carver, but the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. They could see the truth in Clint's eyes, a man defending his honor, not just his name. Kimmel, desperate to claw back control, forced a laugh, but it came out brittle. All right, Clint, you're a tough guy, we get it. But let's not pretend you're some hero. You left Sam Carver to rot while you became a star. That's the real story, isn't it? His voice was sharp, meant to wound, but it only stoked Clint's anger. The accusation wasn't just a lie, it was a betrayal of everything Clint had fought for in a cutthroat industry. He took a step closer, his voice a low rumble that shook the stage. You're a coward, Jimmy. Hiding behind cheap shots 'cause you got nothing real to say. The crowd erupted, some clapping, others shouting for more. Kimmel's face twisted, his charm replaced by raw spite. Coward? Me? I'm not the one dodging the truth. Tell us, Clint, why'd you let Sam take the fall? Was it money? Fame? Or just 'cause you didn't care? The words were venom, spat with a sneer, and the audience gasped at the audacity. Clint's hands clenched, his knuckles white, but he didn't lunge. Instead, he fixed Kimmel with a stare that could stop a man's heart. You want to know why Sam fell? 'Cause the studios chewed him up, and vultures like you picked at what was left. For the first time, Clint's voice cracked, not with weakness, but with raw pain. He turned to the audience, his eyes scanning the sea of faces. Sam Carver was better than me. He had a vision, a fire for stories that meant something. But the suits? They didn't care. They forced me to choose, my career or his. I begged him to fight, to stay, but he was done. You think I wanted that? The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Clint's honesty hit like a freight train, and even Kimmel seemed stunned, his mouth half open. But Kimmel wasn't ready to back down. He sensed the shift in the room and scrambled to twist it back in his favor. Oh, that's a nice story, Clint. Real touching, but you still walked away. You got the big roles, the Oscars, while Sam got nothing. Sounds like you chose yourself. The accusation was cruel, designed to cut deep. And it did. Clint's face darkened, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You don't know what it's like to lose a friend, Jimmy. To watch him break, and know you couldn't stop it. Don't you dare use that to make yourself look big. The audience was on its feet now, some cheering Clint, others booing Kimmel. The host's eyes darted to the control booth, but there was no saving him now. He'd pushed too far, and Clint was done playing nice. You want to talk choices? Clint continued, his voice steady but fierce. I chose to keep going, to make films Sam would have been proud of. What do you choose, Jimmy? To tear people down for a quick laugh? That's your legacy? The words were a gut punch, and Kimmel flinched, his hands gripping the desk harder. The tension was suffocating, the air thick with anticipation. Kimmel, cornered, lashed out. You're not fooling anyone, Clint. You're no saint. You're just good at playing one. But his voice was shaky, his confidence crumbling. Clint didn't respond right away. He let the silence stretch, his gaze boring into Kimmel like a drill. Then, with a slow, deliberate step, he moved closer, his voice a blade. Keep talking, Jimmy. Every word you say just shows the world who you really are. The crowd roared, fully behind Clint now, their cheers a tidal wave. Kimmel's face was pale, his smirk gone for good. The stage was no longer his. It belonged to Clint, and the reckoning was far from over. The studio crackled with raw energy, the audience a live wire ready to spark. Clint Eastwood stood like a storm cloud over Jimmy Kimmel's desk, his presence commanding every inch of the stage. Kimmel, his face flushed and eyes wild, was unraveling. The host had tried to bury Clint with lies about betraying Sam Carver, but Clint's truth had turned the crowd against him. Now, with the air thick and the cameras rolling, Kimmel was cornered, and Clint was ready to finish this fight. You think you can rewrite my life for your little show? Clint said, his voice a low growl that sent shivers through the room. He leaned closer, his hands planted on the desk, caging Kimmel in. You're not a journalist, Jimmy. You're a bully with a spotlight, and I'm done with your games. The crowd roared, their cheers a wall of sound that drowned out Kimmel's attempt to interrupt. His hands fumbled with his note cards, his usual slick charm nowhere to be found. Kimmel, desperate to salvage his show, shot back with a sneer. "You're done? I'm just getting started, Clint. America wants the real you, not this tough guy act. You screwed over Sam Carver, and I'm not letting you dodge that." His voice was shrill, cracking under the pressure. The accusation was a broken record, but Kimmel clung to it like a lifeline, hoping to claw back the crowd's favor. The audience booed, their loyalty now firmly with Clint, who stood unyielding, his eyes burning with controlled fury. "You got no shame, do you?" Clint said, his words sharp as a whip. "Sam's name doesn't belong in your mouth. He was a good man, better than you'll ever be. I carried his dream when he couldn't, made films to honor him. What do you do, Jimmy? Mock people's pain for applause?" The crowd erupted again, some shouting, "Tell him, Clint!" Kimmel's face twisted with rage, his composure gone. He stood, slamming his hands on the desk, his voice rising to a shout. "Don't lecture me, old man! You're not some hero. You're a fraud who let his friend crash and burn." The insult was a mistake, and Kimmel knew it the moment it left his lips. The audience gasped, then fell silent, the weight of his cruelty hanging heavy. Clint didn't flinch. Instead, a slow, dangerous smile curved his lips, the kind that promised trouble. "You just showed your true colors, Jimmy," he said, his voice calm but lethal. "You call me a fraud? Look at you, sweating like a kid caught stealing. You're the one running from the truth." The crowd exploded, their cheers shaking. The studio. Kimmel's eyes darted to the control booth, but no one could save him now. Clint straightened, his gaze sweeping the audience, pulling them into his story. Sam Carver didn't just lose a film. He lost his fight. The studios broke. Him, and I couldn't stop it. But I never turned my back on him. I sent him money, called him, begged him to come back. He wouldn't. That's my regret, not my crime. His voice was raw, heavy with guilt and grit, and the audience was riveted, some wiping tears. Kimmel, sensing the tide turning, tried. One last jab. "Nice speech, Clint, but it doesn't change the facts. You moved on, and Sam didn't." Clint's laugh was cold, cutting through Kimmel's words like a blade. "Facts? You wouldn't know a fact if it bit you. You're just chasing clicks, tearing down anyone bigger than you. But you picked the wrong man to mess with." The crowd was on its feet, chanting Clint's name, their energy a tidal wave. Kimmel sank back into his chair, his face pale, his hands shaking. He'd wanted a viral moment, but he'd gotten a massacre, and Clint wasn't done yet. The stage manager signaled for another break, but Clint didn't budge, his eyes locked on Kimmel. The host's bravado was gone, replaced by a flicker of fear. The audience sensed it too, their cheers growing louder, urging Clint to keep going. This wasn't just a showdown, it was a demolition, and Clint Eastwood was about to bring the house down. The studio was a powder keg, and Clint Eastwood was the spark. The audience, on its feet, roared with a mix of awe and fury, their cheers a thunderclap that shook the stage. Jimmy Kimmel sat slumped behind his desk, his face a mask of defeat, his hands gripping the edges like a drowning man clutching driftwood. He'd tried to tear Clint down with lies about betraying Sam Carver, but Clint had turned the tables, exposing Kimmel's cruelty for all to see. Now, with the cameras locked on him, Clint was ready to end this once and for all. "You're out of moves, Jimmy," Clint said, his voice a low, steady rumble that silenced the crowd. He stepped back, giving Kimmel one last piercing look. "You thought you could drag Sam's name through the dirt and make me the villain. But you're the one looking small now." The words were a final blow, delivered with the precision of a man who'd spent decades commanding respect. The audience erupted, their applause a wave that crashed over Kimmel, who flinched, his eyes darting to the floor. Kimmel tried to rally, his voice weak but defiant. "You don't scare me, Clint. I'm just telling it like it is. You can't handle the truth coming out. It was a pathetic swing, and the crowd booed, their disdain a chorus that drowned him out. Clint shook his head, his smile cold and final. Truth? You wouldn't know truth if it walked up and slapped you. You're just a loudmouth who thought he could break me. Big mistake. The audience roared again, some shouting, "Get him! Clint!" As the energy in the room reached a fever pitch, Clint turned to the crowd, his presence filling every corner of the studio. "Sam Carver was my friend," he said, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "He deserved better than what he got. I carried his dream in every film I made, every story I told. That's my truth, and no cheap talk show can take that away." The words were a tribute, raw and honest, and the audience was spellbound, some wiping tears, others clapping with fierce pride. Clint wasn't just defending himself, he was honoring a man the world had forgotten. Kimmel, desperate to save face, stammered, "You're just spinning a story, Clint. Nobody buys this." But his voice was lost in the crowd's cheers, his words hollow against Clint's conviction. The host's eyes flicked to the control booth, pleading for a lifeline, but the cameras stayed on Clint, capturing every second of his triumph. "You're done, Jimmy," Clint said, his voice cutting through the noise. "You wanted a fight, you got one. But you don't get to rewrite my life for your ratings." The crowd exploded, their cheers shaking the walls, a tidal wave of support for the legend who'd refused to bend. Clint stepped back, his gaze sweeping the audience one last time. "This is for Sam," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "And for anyone who's ever been kicked down by people like him." He pointed at Kimmel, who shrank in his chair, his face pale and defeated. The audience was on its feet, chanting Clint's name, their voices a testament to his victory. He gave a nod, a gesture of gratitude, then turned and walked off the stage, his boots echoing with purpose. The crowd's roar followed him, a hero's farewell. Kimmel sat frozen, the cameras still rolling, his show in ruins. The audience didn't stop cheering, their energy a rebuke to his cruelty. Backstage, Clint paused, his face softening as he thought of Sam, the friend he'd never stopped fighting for. He'd come to clear his name, but he'd done more. He'd reminded the world what loyalty meant. The studio lights dimmed, but Clint Eastwood's legacy burned brighter than ever.